One of the most critical factors for organizational change success in interagency change teams is developing clear and agreed upon goals. In an interagency team, this also means taking into account team members' varied interests and commitments, as well as ensuring fairness. We'll begin by discussing roles of various team members in the strategic planning and goal setting process before we get to the nuts and bolts of developing a process improvement plan. Of course, change team members themselves do a bulk of the important work with strategic planning and goal setting because they know their organizations intimately. Primary tasks of the change team include identifying needs and problems, as we discussed in Module 3, generating solutions to identified problems, connecting problems and solutions with action plans, and then, of course, implementing and maintaining solutions. Change team members are in charge of using the results of the needs assessment, which we reviewed in Module 3, to develop a process improvement plan. This includes identifying high-priority process improvement targets, developing action plans, establishing timelines, and designating individual and collective responsibilities for the change process. You can find templates and examples of these documents in the library of this organizational change training. Critically, change team members also coordinate the implementation of the process improvement plan and make sure that assigned tasks are directly related to process improvement plan goals. Likewise, they're responsible for corrective actions if objectives of the process improvement plan are not met. This might mean adjusting objectives, identifying additional resources, or asking for assistance from executive sponsors. And of course, change team members communicate regularly with the facilitator, local change team leader, agency leaders, and other stakeholders about agencies related to the initiative. Now let's talk about the bulk of what the change team will be up to. At its core, a process improvement plan is just a comprehensive plan to help team members achieve their stated goals. It includes goal statements, objectives, timelines, assignments for specific team members, and resources needed, etc. Consider it a roadmap to success that everybody has access to and has agreed upon. As discussed in Module 3, the process improvement plan is directly informed by background research activities like walkthroughs, SWOT analyses, and flowcharting. These activities help identify problem areas and missing links, and also give change team members from different agencies a feel for what it's like to work in their team members' shoes. Once a team has used group facilitation activities to identify areas for improvement, they can work to develop a logic model of action steps and tasks that include the identified goals, objectives, action steps for achieving objectives, plans for completing action steps, including individual assignments and timelines, measurement of action steps, including evidence of completion and success. One of the first steps of a local change team is to develop a purpose statement. This statement is like an organizational mission and in one or two sentences declares the overall goals of the team as well as the team's intended changes or outcomes. It should be precise, concise, clear, and goal-oriented. The following is a possible example of a purpose statement. The local change team seeks to increase the quality of addiction treatment received by offenders through the implementation of the Addiction Severity Index for all offenders entering the reception center, development, and implementation of a case plan for each offender based on the assessment and development and implementation of an electronic record which integrates the case plan along with the addiction services treatment notes and correctional case notes. Once a team has identified its primary purpose, it must then develop goals that will enable success. Now, let's talk about writing good goals.
If I remember correctly, one of the first steps was this coming up with a standardized protocol, something that said this is how we will communicate, and this is who will communicate, when they'll communicate, what method they'll use, and to have providers and the probation departments agree that, and be able to work off one policy and to have that shared policy. And then it seemed like the other action step was how will we transmit this, which is where the infamous fax machine came in. How will we have one way of communicating this information? And once we had those kind of basic, the protocol, which included a form, and what was our standard form that we would use, and the way we'd transmit it, then it seemed like the rest of the steps for that plan fell into place pretty logically around how do you train staff at these agencies, how do we sit down and coach people who might be having problems, how do we monitor it, how do we check and randomly check to see if this has happened, and then how do we address it, and how do we move through that. And so setting up a schedule in which we would meet every couple weeks and measure our performance and say, are we moving closer towards most of the communication working. And of course you start with a pretty high fail rate usually, and then you work your way towards it. And it seemed like once the team knew what they wanted to fix, the steps were not too challenging.
Goal-setting research tells us that people will be more successful when their goals are specific, measurable, and assigned a time frame. When working in a multi-agency team environment, it's important to have clear goals with objectives that are directly related to goal attainment. Think of objectives as stairs you would climb to achieve your goals. When setting goals, it's important to write them in ways that make it clear when they have been achieved. If goals are too vague, the change team will not be able to determine if they were actually accomplished. For instance, consider the goal to improve communication between Jackson County Probation and the Hillshire Wellness Center. How might members of a change team know when communication is improved? Perhaps we might add some details to that goal, such as improve communication between Jackson County Probation and the Hillshire Wellness Center by holding team-building exercises, establishing monthly roundtables for probation officers and clinicians, and providing members of both agencies with resources for partner agencies. By being specific and measurable, team members can more easily assess if communication has actually been improved. To achieve goals, team members should develop clear objectives that support the goal, along with action steps that outline how objectives will be met. Think about writing SMART goals. This is an acronym for tasks that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-oriented.
As far as what we came up with, we touched on the fax machine earlier. One of the biggest issues were how we actually transmitted the information to and from, and we came up with grandiose ideas that we were going to get a mothership and all this electronic stuff was going to happen, and then HIPAA got in the way. So we really decided we would just stick to what was simple, because we knew we wanted to pick things that weren't going to be a huge financial cost to the department or the agencies, and that we didn't have to go through a lot of red tape, but we wanted to do things that were easy, doable. We didn't have to get the president to bless it. So the other thing that we came up with was that what we were transmitting and what we were doing with the information when we got it, and I think finally having consistency with the information that we were sharing, which really, that's where the stages of change communication was born, right there, as having communication through this a language that we both understood.
So how does a group decide what goals to choose? One popular method of group decision-making is called the nominal group technique, which is essentially a facilitated type of brainstorming. The nominal group technique can be used at any point for generating ideas or solutions to problems. In terms of the process improvement plan developing, it's especially helpful for prioritizing goals. It works like this. First, team members are asked to individually develop a list of goals, or ideas or problems, whatever the case may be. As with classic brainstorming, the sky is the limit. Team members are asked to simply generate as many ideas as possible without worrying too much about parameters like feasibility or budget. After everyone has had a sufficient time to work individually, then the facilitator will help the group by organizing suggestions and eliminating duplicates. Usually this is done on whiteboards or flip charts, such that the group can see all of the suggestions. Then, the team members individually rank the goals, perhaps by casting votes with stickers or tally marks on a flip chart, and in some versions of nominal group technique, ideas that receive the most votes are automatically selected as the final decision. Another helpful technique is called fist-to-five decision-making. Fist-to-five is a great way to quickly get an idea of each team member's level of support for a specific idea or suggestion. Fist-to-five decision-making works like so. One group member presents the details of a suggestion or proposal. If helpful, there may be some discussion, and once the presentation is complete, the facilitator directs team members to vote on the idea using 0 to 5 fingers. A fist represents no support, and this indicates that a team member will work to block the idea. 1 finger suggests no support, but that the team member won't block the proposal. 2 fingers represents minimal support, while 3 fingers suggest neutrality. 4 fingers signals solid support for the idea, and 5 fingers says full support, and that the team member will work hard to actively support the suggestion. By using this highly visual method, the facilitator can easily see how well an idea is supported, and by tallying the support, they can share the reports in short order. Typically, if a goal receives 3 or more fingers from all members, it would be approved as is. If not, changes will need to be made to that goal or suggestion. For more details on changing proposals and adjusting votes, please check out the short document on fist-to-five decision-making in our resources library. No matter the route to decision-making, it's critical that everyone gets a chance to speak and represent their interests. The facilitator, as a neutral party, is essential to helping this process along. In case there's trouble, the facilitator also helps negotiate conflict, which we'll discuss more in Module 5. So, what makes a good goal? This answer will be different for every team, but in interagency collaborations, good goals are the ones that are feasible and will have positive outcomes. Some goals will obviously be high priority, like solving major problems, addressing complex issues that result in better collaboration, while others may be lower priority but easier to accomplish, the low-hanging fruit, if you will. Successful teams generally create a variety of goals and objectives with varying priority and complexity. A key factor in choosing good goals is understanding their impact on the change team and partnering organizations. A task called decisional balancing can help team members see what positive and negative outcomes decision-making or indecision might have for their organization. The task is relatively simple but requires some thought. The first step is creating a matrix with the labels benefits/pros and costs/cons on 2 boxes along the horizontal axis, and making a change and not changing on boxes along the vertical axis, which is pictured. In each box, participants will reflect upon proposed goals and consider the possibilities and problematic outcomes that may stem from both making the decision or avoiding it. By completing this process and then discussing, team members can better assess how their goals might influence their work environment and the greater collaboration. Once goals, objectives, and action steps are chosen, the next task for a change team is to present the process improvement plan to executive sponsors for feedback and approval. If executive sponsors request changes, do not be discouraged. This is quite common and may involve a process of negotiation. However, it is critical to the success of the team for executive sponsors to be in agreement with any proposed changes and to fully support them before they're implemented, which we'll discuss in Module 5. In this module, you learned about the roles involved in strategic planning, how to develop a process improvement plan, how to write goals and objectives, as well as what goes into choosing good goals. In the next and final module, we'll talk about how to implement chosen goals as well as how to sustain them.